You're listening to Love Talk Live with the relationship expert, Jaime Bronstein, only on LA Talk Radio.
Hi, and welcome to Love Talk Live. I am Jaime Bronstein, and I have with me today Eileen Robertson Hamra. Welcome.
Hi, Jaime. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for doing this. I know that our viewers are in store for such a beautiful, beautiful show today. Eileen has written a beautiful book called Time to Fly, Life and Love After Loss. And she's going to tell us all about her inspiration for that story and just what it's like going through life and love after loss.
Yes.
So I'm going to first read to you guys a little bit about Eileen, and then we'll get into the show. So, reality, as Eileen Robertson Hamra perceived it, instantaneously altered the moment authorities confirmed that the plane her husband was piloting had crashed, and he had not survived. In the process of mourning her loss, with 3 young children in tow, where Eileen wandered and landed was nothing short of miraculous. Between the valleys of grief and the peaks of hope, she discovered that keeping promises to those that have left this world is a lifelong act, and honoring one love does not mean foregoing the freedom and joy that is found in reopening your heart, trusting in new love, and expanding your definition of family. Her book, Time to Fly, shares her story, her insights, and more. So, Eileen, welcome. First of all, I'd love to hear from you a little bit about your story. Can you tell us what happened in your life that made you want to write this book?
Okay, so in December 2011, I was actually living in Southern California at the time in Huntington Beach, and we had gone back east to visit my family for the holidays, and Brian was, my late husband, was going to join us, and it was 3 days before Christmas, and it was a twin-engine plane, and his right engine failed, and he didn't survive. And I had a 8-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 8, 7, and 4-year-old at the time. And it was tragic. It was awful. It was the worst thing I'd ever been through. And but very shortly after it happened, there was like these miracles that showed up. I always like to tell people the one that people are like, really, that happened? Like, he was piloting this plane, and like the day after, we're trying to figure out how we're going to host a memorial service. What are we going to do? And this gentleman reached out to me. His name was Al Cooner, and he owned the funeral homes closest to my parents' house. And he said, Eileen, I'm a pilot. I was flying in the same pattern as your husband was, and I heard him flying like on the radio, and I want to take care of all of the funeral expenses.
Oh my God. Wow.
So like, okay, now I'm 41 years old. I've lost my husband, but I have a pilot funeral director guiding me.
Wow.
And then he suggested this venue to host a celebration of life. I wanted a celebration of life, and it was a business museum with a plane hanging from the ceiling that I didn't even know existed. Like, I didn't know that there was a museum in Baltimore like that. So I would tell people stories like that, and they'd be like, oh my God, Eileen, you got to write a book. You got to write a book. And there was like so many like sort of interesting stories, like feeling like, I'm in tragedy, but I'm noticing these things, and I was growing and in my health. So I decided, okay, well, I want to write this book. And I started writing, and I kept attempting to write. And then I was like, I don't know what I'm writing. I don't want to write a 1, 2, 3 grieve with me book. Like, what am I writing? And like, I'm like, my story's not that interesting. Like, I mean, everybody's interesting, right? Like, so anyway, fast forward, these fits and starts in writing. And then, I totally believe that my late husband, and Mike my now husband, would attest that he set us up. And there was like some crazy, weird stories around our meeting and around our coming together. And then I was, and actually opening up myself to having another child actually at 46. So I got pregnant at 46, and it was when I was pregnant with Zach, Mike and I's baby, that I realized, I was like, okay, wait a minute. This is the full story. This is the story that gives people hope, because like and I remember after I finished reading it, I was talking to my sister and I was like, oh my God, I was like, this is the kind of story I wanted to hear when it happened to me. Those, I think sharing stories of hope, of resilience gives people, you know, some hope, some, like, oh my gosh, if she can do it, I can do it. You know, your story won't be my story. You'll have a different story, but if I can do it, other people can do it. So, and then, yeah, so that's kind of the really long story about why, long story short, actually, about why I wrote.
Well, it seems like one aspect that you have, a quality that you have, is just seems like you have this positive energy about you that probably helped you manifest and heal. And so I'm assuming that you share that. That's part of your whole message.
Yes.
You probably, in your moments of grief, your deep grief, you probably wanted, like you just said, a book like yours. And so what can you offer, just some guidance of if somebody is in that really deep grief, what are some of the things that helped you?
I think, yeah, so I think a couple things. One is like, and my dad gave me this advice, like when I was feeling, he's like, you've got to be where you are. So when you're in the deep grief, to feel like you shouldn't be there or pretend that you're not there, or that that's not painful, or like try to escape it, it really doesn't work. So to be okay that that's where you are. But I think for me, I don't know why exactly, but like grief for me had me slow down and just be where I was. And it was really interesting because what I noticed very immediately was that, and the kids were a great messenger for me. It was like what I'm upset about is the future, right? Like I'm not upset about this moment that I'm sitting in, because I'm sitting with my kids and I'm upset that, yeah, maybe I'm upset that he's not here, but all of this love that is around me, this is beautiful, right? But I'm upset thinking about all of my memories in the past, and I'm upset about thinking about everything into the future. But if I sit right here, like with you this minute, life is good. You know, like life is good. I'm meeting, you know, we're having this great conversation. So, and kids have an unbelievable ability to just be in the moment, right? When they're playing, whatever they're playing, they're just playing, you know, and they like, it was Christmas time and when we celebrate Christmas. So they were like, is Santa Claus coming tonight? Like, I want to die. I wanted to puke. I wanted to, like, I could barely move. And they still wanted Santa Claus. And I was like, okay, Santa Claus is coming. You know, like we've got to make this through. And so I feel like, I don't know, that was maybe a convoluted answer, but I think part of it is being where you are and noticing what there is to notice.
So you mentioned a few things. You mentioned I love that you said, don't push your feelings away. Feel like what your dad was saying, feel your feelings. I always tell my clients the best way past is through, that you have to go through it. You can't just skip.
I literally, in my introduction, or like what I just say, I was like, it reminds me of that children's book, We're Going on a Bear Hunt. It's like, you can't go over it. You can't go under it. Oh no, you've got to go through it. And literally, like, there is no way over it. There is no way under it. But honestly, it doesn't feel like it, but there is so much joy on the other side when you are willing to go through it. And I didn't know that. Like, you know, you don't always know that because you don't know what it looks like on the other side. Like, what is my life going to look like without him? Like, there was no plans. I didn't didn't want it. So now what? Right. And yeah.
You obviously did not ask for it.
No, I didn't. No, I did not ask for it. Yeah.
Okay. So you were saying that you're just to feel it is so important. And then you said something else that I wanted to, towards the end of what you were talking about, that I wanted to talk about, but maybe you don't remember.
Oh, I don't remember.
Okay. Anyhow, that was beautiful. So feel the feelings in order to get past it and to know, and just to be present and to be in the moment. That's what I wanted to talk about, because being present, there isn't, the past and the future don't exist. So they just don't, they're just not anything. And so being in the past is depression and being in the future is anxiety. So I love that you got to that point where you just realized that just being here now is really all that we do have.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you mastered that.
Yeah, I think probably a little bit out of a necessity, because trying to be where I couldn't be was like just too much. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's good. I mean, the good thing is that you experience that overwhelmingness of like, am I there? Am I here? And probably you just got to the point where, like you're saying, you just couldn't, what do I have control over? I have control over, like, okay, I can be present, right? Because it sounds like there's a lot that you didn't have control over.
And I think in being present, I did notice all these miracles. Like I did notice it when I was present and when I was in the moment, like all of the love that was present. There was so much love present. So that was.
And how did you meet your current husband?
So I tell the story in the book, but I had met this guy. His name was Bob Mueller, and he was a coach of my late husband's company, and he was actually always also working with Mike's company, and he did consulting. He was working with Brian's board and Mike's company, and about 8-9 months after Brian died, I was looking for someone to help me define, like, what am I going to do now? I'm not doing that. I'm now back in Maryland, and what am I going to do with my life? And I was literally writing an email to find a coach, getting a referral from someone else. And he writes me, he's like, hey, I want to invite you to this leadership conference that we're hosting in Virginia. Would you like to come? And I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. I would, I'd love to come, and I'm looking for a coach. And he says, okay, I'll coach you pro bono. So that was in August. So fast forward until February, about, 14 months after Brian passed. And we were having our monthly call, and I had taken off my wedding rings because I was starting, and really was the beginning of starting to think of opening myself up to loving again. And he said to me, he's like, oh, coaches are like, oh, I want you to meet Joe, and I want you to meet Bobby, and I want you to meet Mike. And I didn't even write any of their names down. But at the end of the call, I said, okay, I'm starting to think about the possibility. And he's like, oh, well, that's why I think you should meet Mike. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, what's his name? So I wrote his name down, and I Googled him, and I was like, oh my gosh, he's totally my type. He's really good looking. But it took several more months before we were actually introduced. And there's a couple more stories in the book, but like I was pretty clear when I met him, like there was so much energy between the two of us, and I felt like this trusted introduction. And yeah, and there's like, oh, and then why I think that, do you want me to tell you that quick story? Why I think Brian, so I met him, and we didn't go on a date yet or anything. We were just talking on the phone. And then I had this crazy vivid dream where Brian came to me in my dream. And I had dreamed about him before, but it wasn't so pleasant. It was like he wouldn't talk to me, or it was like, I don't know, whatever. But this dream, we were at the San Diego Zoo actually. And I walked up to him, and I was like, oh my God, he's here. I've got to go talk to him. And he turned around, and he was like, oh my God. And I was like, I miss you so much. And he's like, Eileen, you don't ever have to miss me. I am always with you. And I just started crying in my dream. And then I asked him, I said, okay, then what about this new guy, Mike? And he's like, he used to be a jerk, but he's a really great guy. I know, this is my dream. I don't know why he said that or what it meant. But anyway, he's like, but he's a really great guy and I've got your back. And it was crazier. So I woke up and it was like one of those dreams, like you have goosebumps, you're like crying when you wake up, like the most vivid type of dream. And then I talked to Mike like 2 nights later and he's like, oh my God, I had this crazy dream with Brian in it. And I was like, do you even know what he looks like?
Shut up.
He goes, no, he goes, we were at a pool and he came up to me with all of his friends. He was surrounded by his friends. And he said to me, Brian said to Mike in the dream, he's like, I want you to take care of my kids, but I want you to remember that I am their hero and that they idolize me.
Wow.
This before we even went on a date.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it was around the same night that you had the dream?
It was like a night or two after.
Okay. That's so beautiful.
I mean, it might have been the same night. I don't remember now, but it was like nuts.
So clear.
It was so clear. And then we would go on dates and like there was a lot of trust in being introduced by someone who knew all three of us. There was a lot of trust, just feeling like, and the kids were super open as well. So, they actually, I like kids can tell you a lot. So, anyway, yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you're bringing this story up because I know that you have an amazing story about how he is still with you and how when people do pass on, if you believe that and you're open to it, that they can still be with you. So if you could share that story, and I know you can read it if you want to, because she has a few paragraphs in her book about it, or you can just tell the story. It's totally up to you.
I'll just tell the story because it gives too much context, but what do I want to do? Let me look.
Wait, let's get guidance from Brian.
Yeah.
What do you want her to do?
Okay, I'm going to read it.
Okay.
Just so you can get a sense of it, and it's maybe shorter than me talking about it. So it's a little heavy in that this is actually the experience. So like when I'm sharing about actually seeing Brian's body. So it's a pretty heavy scene in the book, and Al Cooner, who I already mentioned, was bringing me to the casket for the first time. So, but this is where the transformation happened in this depth of sadness. So the notion of seeing Brian's lifeless body was crushing. I wanted to vomit. I had never been more nervous in my life. Once again, though, Al took me first and alone into the room with the casket. Al walks widows and widowers to the sides of caskets for a living, and he's good at it. At the casket, he asked if I wanted Brian's ring. I said yes. I took off my rings and I slid his ring, which was big on me, onto my ring finger closest to my heart. As soon as I placed the ring back on top of his, a transformation took place. I was marrying Brian all over again. I know I wasn't breathing because I remember telling myself, breathe, Eileen, breathe. I managed to take a deep breath. Brian didn't look like himself. He looked like he had lost 20 pounds. I took another deep breath. He looked at peace. Once I was inhaling and exhaling like a living human being. I reached out. The moment I touched his hand, the recognition struck me that all of us, foremost, are spiritual beings temporarily living a human experience. How could I have forgotten our bodies are mere containers? Brian had just become a casing. His fingers were cold and rock-like, where mine were burning, weightless, nothing. Our souls fill these bodies with energy, and our breath moves in and out of our lungs. We take up space and we make our voices heard, and then poof. Brian, as I knew him, was no longer in that room. He was not in his body, that body. His light had flown. Al gave me all the time I needed, and in that time, with our rings stacked in their new arrangement, I promised Brian that I would do everything that we had promised each other we were going to do. I told him, I'm going to be okay. You're going to be okay. You take it from your side, and I'll take it from this one. We've got this.
Wow. It is so beautiful. And I love the way it's written. I mean, the way that it's written, you can really, really see exactly what you saw. And it was just such a beautiful picture. Was that, when you were writing that, was that hard? Because sometimes when I write it, I'm like, I just want to get it from here to here, like from my heart, my head to the paper. When you wrote it, it seems like it just kind of formed and came out.
Yeah. So writing, what I learned over writing, and I hired a wonderful woman, Christine Fadden, who helped me, because she was a writer, and helped me write stories like that, and helped me, and it really is speaking from your heart. Mm-hmm. And there is a bit about going back to where you were, like in remembering the experience, because we often, we move through life, we've moved through it, right? And then in order to write, you actually have to go back and be there. And so there were a lot of times when I write about that, and I'm actually doing the audiobook right now. Okay. And I will find myself crying at certain parts, even now, even though I know it's on words and we're past, it's like, but, and I think, and actually good news is too, there's very funny stories in here too, and joyful stories. So those were also fun to write, but it is about, recreating it so that the words can really create a picture of what it really was like. And yeah.
Well, it's so great. I'm just getting the sense that you're very in touch with your emotions. And I work with people all the time to just express their feelings and get in touch with their feelings and be their feelings and share their feelings. And so I feel like whether it's overtly or covertly, you're going to inspire your readers to just experience their feelings.
Yeah. And actually I've said to a lot of people, like, the process of writing the book, it was like another level of healing, right? Because there were, I think there's always layers upon layers upon layers, right? I guess until we go, and who knows what's on the other side.
Lots of learning always.
Yeah, there's a lot of healing. And though I was healed enough, right, to write a book or whatever, but I felt like there were moments in the book where I just really got at peace. And I think part of that for me personally was having compassion for myself, for where I was, because I am strong. I am resilient. I am, a buck up, like I can do this. I am positive, and I made mistakes, and I wasn't always strong, and I'm not perfect at all, and don't really want to, tell everybody that, but like, I can have compassion for myself and share that, right? Because that is what it was for me, so I think that part of it was healing too. So,
well, it sounds like you are very vulnerable, and when we are vulnerable, we are relatable. And no one is perfect. Yeah. And to have that self-compassion is one of the greatest gifts you can give to yourself.
Yeah, it is. It's crucial. It's actually really, really important. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So my next question for you is, can you tell us about this legacy that you've built and how you're keeping Brian's legacy alive? And I know you have a fundraiser that you do every year.
Yeah. So we've done multiple things, and I think that's one of the beauties of like carrying on someone's legacy, and that it doesn't always have to be the same thing over and over and over. And I when he first passed away, he was in the solar energy industry. He was the CEO of Aminex, which is a solar panel manufacturer down in Seal Beach. And he had co-founded Sun Edison, and he was very influential. So there was a lot of people that wanted to honor him, honor his legacy in the solar energy industry. So actually some great friends of mine in Huntington Beach, in our community that we lived with, we put together a fun run, and we raised money for the first time on Earth Day for the BDR Solar Schools Fund. And so we did that for about 5 years. We were a project of the Solar Foundation, and we put solar panels. We helped multiple projects get solar panels so that kids could have a real firsthand experience with solar. And then we've done some other renewable energy and environmental focus legacy work. This past fall, I actually took a group of students from Chicago to the UN to take part in a conference for climate restoration, which was phenomenal. And it was kids from all over Chicago. So kids from Inglewood and, private schools, public schools, alternative schools. It was really great. So we're doing that. And then Brian was he was an entrepreneur. So we've done, entrepreneurial type support, like fast pitch contest type of support in his honor. And then really I'm looking over there, like the kids are there because they're not, but really, making sure that they, know who their dad was, knew, what he valued, how funny he was or hilarious like he is. And, the way just to acknowledge them and, just make them feel like they are part of his legacy, right? They're his biological children, and supporting things that, he would be super supportive of, even if it's not something I would do, right? Like if he would do it, like that whole promise, like if, we would do this together. Like I often think I have an amazing partner in Mike, thank God. And he is an amazing father, and he's adopted the kids, and they are like his own, but he's not Brian. So like sometimes we have a conversation, like a simple one, like Max wanted a new computer, and Brian was, went to MIT, like he was a computer person. And even though I was like, does he really need one? No, but I guarantee you, Brian would have bought one, right? It was little, but it was like, yeah, of course you can get a new, faster, whatever computer. So yeah,
that's amazing, because you are keeping him alive.
Yeah. And I think the thing about grief, and I think this happens with all people, but it's like, and I notice this especially with the children, is it actually moves through time, right? And they grieved as a 4, 7, and 8-year-old would grieve, but now they're almost 13, 15, and 17, and they now are, emotionally developed, from a developmental perspective, having to process new things about losing their dad. So it is important to keep his memory alive. And I think what's really interesting, and I do feel incredibly boss, but Mike is completely supportive of that. And, I think he's grateful. He's like, hey, thank you for this family that I got to inherit, right? Like I got to pick up and have these amazing people in my life, and I wouldn't have had that without him. So, which is unique. And I think it's beautiful. Like the whole idea of family, couldn't have imagined that was possible. Right. And now here I have this, family. Yeah. And we go up to Brian's cottage with his mom and his dad and his sisters and cousins and extended family every summer. And we have them over Christmas. This past Christmas, we were everywhere. We're with his family, my family, and Brian's family. So it's good. It's good.
I love it. Well, I can just sense so much joy from you, but also a sensitivity to Brian. And I love that you include him in decisions and what would Brian do. It's so beautiful. And I also love how you just brought up how you were talking about your kids grieving at going through different phases, but it is so true whether you were a kid or you weren't a kid, when you have loss, that you are going to go through different phases in life and grieve at different times, right?
Yeah. And things will trigger you, right? Like things will, yeah. Experiences, the high school graduations are coming up. We went through the 8th grade graduations, or just, the girls are thinking about where do they want to go to college. And although my one daughter's like, no offense, mom, but you didn't go to where Brian went to school, and I'm like, and she's like, I just really want to ask him. Like, and I was like,
where should I go?
Yeah, where should I go? What do you think? What do you think he would say? And it's really interesting because I think, we were just having this conversation. I was like, well, I know what he would have said as a 38-year-old man, right? Because that's when he passed. But I know the kind of human being he was. But now he would be 40. How old would he be? I don't know, 40. I can't do math. He'd be like 46. So what would he say as a 46-year-old, and what would he say as he grew and matured, right? And I said, and there's a ton of people that you can also ask, like his peers. Like you can ask his friends, you can ask his mom and dad, you can ask his sister, you can ask all kinds of people that also knew him and knew who he was and how they've grown. And it's like, we're all like holding space for Brian.
And they can also ask him.
Yes.
They get quiet and they connect and they can just ask him, right?
Yeah, I do. I tell them that.
It sounds like you're very connected. Yeah, see, you're saying that you tell them that they can ask him also. They might not be as comfortable, but I feel like as they get older, they will.
Yeah.
And they'll, just like you have seen signs, they're going to see signs that he's around. They'll have dreams, etc.
Yeah. I think they have at times. And sometimes I think they're yearning for it so bad. And they're like, where is he? How come you get signs, mom, and I don't get signs? I was like, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe you're not seeing your signs, or I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how all that works. So
when he's supposed to visit, he will.
Yeah.
Okay. So where can people buy your book? And can you tell us about any events that are coming up? I know you were going to be having some in-person events, but I think now they're online, but maybe you're going to have in-person in the future. So tell us.
Yes. So you can buy my book anywhere books are sold. So it's available. It's distributed through Simon & Schuster. So you can buy it at, my press is City Point Press, but the distribution Simon & Schuster. So everywhere, like you can go to your local bookstore if you want to support them, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, anywhere books are sold. And you can also go to my website and click. And then one thing I'm doing is.
Wait, what is your website? Tell everybody what your website is.
It's EileenRobertsonHamra.com.
Okay. And
myname.com. It wasn't taken.
Amazing. And the book is called Time to Fly, Life and Love After Loss. So people know that. And events.
So I'm actually having some virtual book clubs, and we're going to launch a book club product. So like if you have a book club that you can actually buy books directly from me, and I can give them to you at a discount. And then if you want, I could show up for half an hour or an hour or however long virtually. So I think it's kind of interesting because, I did have lots of plans. I was actually supposed to be live with you and then, with friends in Huntington Beach and in West Hollywood. And here I am not there. But I'm trying to take advantage of the virtual book club on some podcasts. I'm on social media, all the different platforms. You go to my website, you can connect with me, and I would love that and love to hear feedback. And yeah, that's all.
Well, I'm so excited for you that you've written this book, and I'm excited for the readers, people whose lives are going to be so inspired and changed by reading your book.
Thanks. I hope so. That is my hope for sure. Yeah.
It's already happening, I'm sure.
Thanks, Jamie.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Eventually, we'll have to do it in person in the studio when things are back to.
Yes, I would love to meet you in person. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yes, you have to let me know when you actually are in LA for those events or just there.
Yes, I will. Come now.
And as always, if anybody has any questions and you can't reach Eileen or just questions about the show in general, my website is therelationshipexpert.com. So thank you so much for joining us, viewers. Thank you, Eileen. And I hope everybody has a wonderful evening. Thanks for joining us on Love Talk Live.
You're listening to Love Talk Live with the relationship expert, Jaime Bronstein, only on LA Talk Radio.